Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever felt like you needed maybe a map for life?
Yeah, not just like Google Maps directions, right?
Exactly. More a deeper sense of how to navigate challenges, Make choices, find some meaning in the everyday stuff.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into a set of sources that seem to offer something like that.
A window into Sikhism, but maybe not through abstract philosophy, more through these vivid personal stories, people just living their lives.
And these aren't tales of, superheroes or
No
anything.
capes, no magic powers.
Right. They're stories about ordinary individuals. You've got a shy young woman, a guy facing job loss, a worried parent.
Friends trying to figure things out, just normal people.
Exactly. So our mission here in this deep dive is to kind of pull out the important bits, the insights from these stories,
Looking at the themes, yeah. And what motivates the characters in these situations.
and how these stories kind of offer a map, like you said, for how Sikhs might view the world.
And maybe how anyone could think about conducting themselves within it.
The really interesting part, I think, is how they show you don't need to be, well, extraordinary to make good choices.
Right. Or to contribute something
That
positive.
capacity, maybe that potential,
Yeah.
it's shown as being right there,
Yeah.
inside us, ordinary people.
It's about seeing these core principles lived out in, relatable ways, sometimes messy ways.
Human situations.
Totally. So let's see what these sources show us about finding strength, purpose, connection right in the middle of normal life.
Often in unexpected places, too.
Let's start with that idea of finding solace, strength, connection, because let's face it, life, it throws stuff at you.
It definitely does. And these sources are full of stories about people turning inward or reaching out for support during tough times.
What seems really clear is the role of the community and sacred spaces.
Absolutely. We hear about Sukhjit. She gets some bad news, health-wise,
Right.
and she's feeling this deep sorrow, and she finds herself drawn to the Gurudwara, the Sikh place of worship.
And there she performs ardas.
Yes, Ardas. It's a personal prayer, a supplication,
Sure.
really pouring out her heart.
And while she's there, she notices something about the plants.
Yeah, around the Guru Granth Sahib, that's the eternal guru, the sacred scripture. The plants seem really green, renewed,
Okay.
and another woman there, a Benji or sister, tells her the land where the true guru sits becomes green and fertile. It's a saying.
Wow. And the connection.
Well, the fascinating part is later on, Suchi finds out she's pregnant unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Doctors had said it probably wouldn't happen.
So the story connects that act of seeking solace, the sacred space, and then this unexpected blessing.
Exactly. It's quite powerful.
But it's not always these huge dramatic moments, is it?
No, not at all. Think about Amarpal. She's newly married, living in a foreign country, massive culture shock.
Your situation.
For her, the local Gurudwara becomes, she calls it a familiar and friendly place.
Mhm.
It brings her balance, peace, reminds her of home.
So it's an emotional anchor, a refuge.
Definitely. And then there's Dilbagh. He's facing job loss, rejection after rejection,
Real.
real-world stress.
Been there.
He goes to the Gurdwara, too. Sits with a wise older man, a Babaji.
And he asks him something specific.
He asks if it's really true, the saying that nobody leaves empty-handed from Guru Nanak's house if their heart is pure.
Turning to faith in the community, the Sangat, when things feel hopeless.
Right. Seeking that hope, that guidance.
So the Gurudwara, the Sangat, clearly vital support systems, but the sources also talk about daily personal practice, right, for building that inner strength.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Narinder Singh's story is a great example. He struggles at first, getting a routine going,
It can be hard.
but eventually he manages daily nitnam, the morning and evening prayers, often done at Amrit Vela, the early morning hours.
And what does he find?
He discovers it brings him energy, calm, serenity, balance. It changes things for him.
And he's not alone in that experience.
No, Manohar and his wife find something similar. They talk about deep contentment, mental peace, and a sense of deepening spirituality from their daily routine, their prayers.
It becomes a priority that really shifts their lives.
Yeah. And Harman's story is interesting, too. He's been practicing early morning devotion his whole life, seeking that connection with God.
Okay.
But sometimes he feels lost. He learns that ultimately the connection is God's decision, but the journey itself.
The seeking, the practice, that's important too.
Exactly. The devotion, the discipline, it has value in itself, regardless of immediate, traumatic results.
There's also that little moment with Mandeep during Kirtan, the singing of hymns.
Ah, yes.
He's hoping for some kind of spiritual vision, but a baby crawls into his lap and interrupts him.
It's subtle, isn't it? Maybe suggesting the divine can show up in simple ways, unexpected ways, not just grand visions.
Right, not just the big dramatic stuff.
So what you see across these stories is how practices like connecting with the Guru Granth Sahib, doing kirtan, sharing langar, that community meal,
Everyone eats together, yeah.
performing artas, daily nitnam,
Mhm.
simran, the meditative remembrance of God's name, they're all woven into ordinary life.
They provide a kind of foundation, an inner compass.
That's a good way to put it, for navigating the ups and downs. Gurpreet talks about finding strength through Simran, just repeating Vaheguru, Vaheguru
Yeah.
during a really important ceremony.
And she had support, too.
Yes, from the Sevadars, the volunteers from the Sangat. It shows how these practices become both internal resources and are bolstered by the community.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit more. How does that inner strength, that connection, translate into, well, action out in the world?
Often these sources show it coming out most clearly in moments of crisis. It reveals this deep courage, a willingness to stand up.
And this is where we see that idea of the ordinary hero really shine through.
Definitely. Jasmeet's story is incredibly powerful. He's faced with an active shooter situation. Someone gives him a gun.
Terrifying.
His first reaction is pure fear. I can't do this, he thinks.
Understandable.
But then people around him are in danger, someone urges him, people are dying, and he acts.
What does he do?
He tells someone to run, get to safety. He focuses his mind on the creator, and he manages to stop the attacker. And the source points out, this is how you become a Bahadur, valiant, brave. By serving humanity, fighting oppression, protecting the innocent.
And that's the key thing, isn't it? Bravery isn't not feeling fear.
Exactly. It's choosing to act despite it. Jasmeet wasn't like a trained soldier in that moment. He was an ordinary person who chose bravery.
We see a different kind of courage in Bagel's story, too. Moral courage.
Yes, she's highly skilled in some kind of competition, but the real test isn't her skill.
What happens?
She sees another competitor, who is blindfolded, being treated unfairly by the judges.
Oh.
And Bagel speaks up. She stands up for the other person, even though it risks her own position, her own success.
Takes guts.
It does. And the judges later reveal that was the real test. Having the heart and the courage to stand up to injustice when you have everything to lose and nothing to gain.
So moral courage is valued even above skill.
Seems paramount, yes.
And sometimes acting courageously isn't just reacting, it's proactive.
Right, like Udi. He's described as an old warrior saint. He sees women in his area are facing crime, danger.
And he doesn't just complain.
No, he doesn't wait for someone else to fix it. He acts. He trains 100 local girls and women in self-defense.
Using simple tools.
Yeah, like walking sticks. Accessible things. He empowers them to protect themselves. It's community action, driven by courage and concern.
The sources have other examples of just regular people stepping up.
They do. There's Kelly's rescuer on the subway, just described as a man with a blue turban and beard, a Sikh man, an ordinary commuter.
Who does what?
Steps in to protect a stranger who's being attacked, puts himself in danger for someone else.
Wow.
Then there's Lewis. He happens to have military training, finds himself at a chaotic traffic accident.
And he takes charge.
Instinctively, yeah. Directs traffic, helps the injured, uses his skills for service right there in an emergency.
And Dayal?
She's caught in a dangerous situation herself, but makes the compassionate choice to help an injured old man escape, making tough calls under pressure.
There's also that story of the warrior saving the kidnapped girl.
Yes, drawing swords, acting decisively to protect someone vulnerable, another illustration of that principle.
So what these stories seem to teach us is these people aren't born different. They don't have superpowers.
Not at all. They make choices. Choices based on core principles like duty fars, compassion daya, courage, when they're faced with danger or injustice.
The capacity to be that Bahadur, that brave person, it's shown to be within them, a potential they choose to realize.
Exactly. It's realized through choice and action.
Okay, let's shift gears just slightly. That idea of acting for others, it goes beyond just crisis moments, right? Into
Wow.
the everyday.
Oh, definitely. These sources really explore compassion and service, seva, and the huge role of community support.
Seva seems fundamental.
It really is. And the stories show it in so many different forms. Take Kunit. She learns this big lesson about what true beauty Khubsurat really is. She sees an old woman doctor working in the slums, treating sick kids with just incredible kindness, incredible care. And this doctor accepts maybe just a single coin, or sometimes nothing at all, for her work.
And Gannett realizes
That is true beauty. Not outward looks, but the selfless service, the compassion this doctor embodies.
that's a powerful reframing. Beauty as action, as care for others.
It really is. And we see Seva on a bigger scale, too, with Whitson's story. After some kind of disaster,
Yeah.
aid workers show up, described again as wearing blue turbans and beards. They provide shelter, food, medicine, and love. That's specifically mentioned.
Wow.
Whitson learns that this service is their purpose. It's inspired by their faith, maybe connected to the spirit of places like the Golden Temple, where Langar feeds so many thousands every day.
He feels gratitude.
Profound gratitude, yeah, for this selfless help driven by faith.
But importantly, Sita isn't always these huge organized efforts.
No, absolutely not. Karender's story is so simple but speaks volumes. He sees an old man looking a bit undignified. He just performs this simple act of service. He combs the man's hair, ties it neatly, just ensures the man's dignity through this small act of care.
Seeing the humanity in someone and responding with kindness, it's powerful.
It is, and the sources are full of examples of community members just pitching in. Dilip and Manish donating furniture, helping move it for the Gurudwara guest rooms.
Using their resources, their effort.
Right. And remember Gurpreet. She said she couldn't have gotten through her initiation ceremony without the Sevadars from her local Sangat. Practical help, emotional support.
Community in action.
And that story with Araceli, her neighbors instinctively working together to save a baby who fell. It shows that natural community impulse to help.
So the connection is really clear. Seva is core. It's expressed in humble ways, big ways.
Using whatever you have time, skills, money, ever.
To help others, help the community, often inspired by faith.
And performed by ordinary members of the Sangat, making that principle real, tangible.
Okay, so beyond the external actions, the courage, the service, the sources, also really dig into the internal stuff, right? The battles people face inside and how their perspectives might shift.
Yes, often guided by faith and practice. Mina's story is a great example of building that inner resilience.
Sure, sure.
Naturally shy, yeah. But she learns to draw strength from her father's words, a specific prayer, actually. Deshiva Bar Mohe.
She uses it like an anchor.
Exactly. An internal anchor during college stress and later in a tough job where she faces prejudice.
And it's not magic, it's cultivated.
Right. She actively cultivates it through practice. And she even uses that strength later to help her own father when he needs healing.
Wow. Rajender's story offers a really different, maybe challenging way to look at hardship.
It does. She's suffering a lot in her marriage, seeks guidance.
And a spiritual elder tells her something surprising.
Very surprising. He reveals that her current difficulty is, in a way, an answer to your prayer from years back. She had prayed for courage, for mental toughness, specifically to face her parents getting older, eventually passing away.
Okay.
And the elder explains that sometimes God answers prayers for things like courage, not by just giving it to you, but by creating situations where you have to develop it.
So hardship isn't random suffering, necessarily. It can be an opportunity for growth you asked for.
That's the perspective shift offered, yeah, reframing it completely.
That's profound.
Okay.
And Dilba's story, the one with the job loss, there was some counterintuitive advice there too.
Yes. After all the rejections, the Babaji tells him to do something that seems totally illogical.
What was it?
Give away when he needs most income. Make a donation. And trust in Vaheguru God, the wondrous enlightener.
Based on faith that needs will be met. That the house of Guru Nanak Sahib is overflowing.
Exactly. Rooted in that deep faith. And the outcome.
Multiple job offers appear unexpectedly.
Right. A lesson in trust, in generosity, even when logic screams scarcity. Trusting the divine plan.
The sources also touch on internal struggles with, like judgment and prejudice.
Raman feels guilty after judging an old woman's small offering at the Gurudwara.
It's about looking beyond appearances, focusing on intent.
Seems so. And similarly, Kashi feels uncomfortable around certain people, Jodi and Manish, maybe based on how they look or what she's heard.
But she learns differently.
She learns they're actually generous donors, dedicated helpers at the Gurudwara. It challenges that internal bias, judging on the surface.
There's that really striking story with Nick, too. The one about spiritual sight.
Ah, yes. He suddenly starts seeing people differently. Most look like decaying corpses to him.
Disturbing.
But he sees a Sikh woman as shining with light. Because she's cleansed, she tells him.
And she says he's been gifted with the sight to see spiritual states.
Right. It strongly emphasizes the interstate purity, cleansing over physical appearance. and suggests reality can be perceived in very different spiritual ways.
Goyle's story sounds more like a warning.
A bit of a cautionary tale, yeah. He turns away from his spiritual discipline, wants a normal life. He seems to lose some kind of spiritual protection. A mild illness he had before becomes severe. It raises questions about the internal choice material comfort versus the inner path and its potential benefits or protections.
There's also that vignette about the soul's journey.
Right, getting lost in materialism, sexual pursuits after birth, suffering, then finally crying out to the Creator, realizing time was lost.
Framing life as this potential spiritual journey with choices about focus,
Yeah,
material versus spiritual.
exactly. Where do you put your energy? And Seo's story really brings that home.
He's a celebrity.
Yeah, achieves fame, external success, but finds it totally empty.
Where does he find fulfillment?
Only feels good performing, but
Yeah.
finds true fulfillment, acceptance, and such a deep, profound love when singing a Shabbat hymn with real emotion at the Gurudwara.
Meaning found in spiritual connection, community, not fame.
Precisely.
These stories are so valuable because they're honest about the internal struggles. Insecurity, fear, judgment, searching for meaning, dealing with hardship. We all face that stuff. And they show that growth, strength, changing your perspective, it comes from inner work, from faith, learning, challenging yourself.
Not from external power or status. It's about what happens inside.
And finally, let's circle back to that theme of trust. Trusting the process, trusting something larger, and how that can open doors to unexpected blessings.
Yes, that thread runs through many of these accounts.
We saw Dilbaz's story end with multiple job offers right after he followed that seemingly crazy advice to give and trust.
It really illustrates how faith, trusting a larger plan, can kind of defy normal expectations, lead to good outcomes.
Then there's Narinder finding that Kara Parshad, the sweet offering, in his takeout bag.
Yeah, after he got his prayer routine going, it's small, mysterious, a little blessing, maybe reinforcing his path, a sign, perhaps.
And Ramesh getting those medicines for Narinder so quickly, so easily when they were needed.
Just highlights how help can arrive unexpectedly. Resources can appear when you're on a certain path, or simply when there's a need.
Rup Kaur's story is maybe the most dramatic example of trust and protection.
It really is. She gets delayed simply because her father-in-law asks her to read a specific prayer, Mirabani.
A simple act of faith, of duty.
And that delay causes her to miss a really bad traffic accident she would have been in. It saved her life.
Wow. Following a spiritual impulse leads to tangible protection.
It's presented that way, yes. And remember Araceli's question about God granting wishes to non-Sikhs.
She gets that clear answer, of course. He gives to all.
And right after, her son is saved by the neighbors working together. It suggests divine grace, community support. They're universal, not limited by religion.
Accessible to everyone.
Exactly. So these vignettes, taken together, they suggest that trusting in something larger in Veguru, doing the practices like prayer and service, focusing on duty, it can align you with a sort of benevolent flow.
Where needs get met, help appears, blessings happen.
Yeah, unexpectedly sometimes. It's about faith in action and trusting the outcome rather than feeling like you have to control everything yourself.
So what does this all mean for you, listening? As we've seen in this deep dive, these stories from Sikh sources, they're not just old tales or theology points.
No, they really feel like a practical map navigating modern life's complexities.
They show us core values. Courage, compassion, service, faith aren't just for saints or mythical heroes.
They're lived out, practiced by ordinary people, facing everyday stuff, job loss, illness, fear, prejudice, temptation, finding meaning.
You don't need superpowers, or some innate magic to stand up for what's right.
Or to help someone find inner peace, get through hard times.
The strength often comes from inside, cultivated through practice, discipline,
Supported by community.
guided by faith, by principles.
And these stories offer different ways to look at beauty, success, what really matters. They push us to look past the surface.
Find the extraordinary in the ordinary choices we make every day.
Perhaps the most powerful takeaway, for me anyway, is this idea that the capacity to make a difference, to live a meaningful life. It's not about being special.
Not about having some innate heroic quality.
It's dependent on our choices,
Yeah.
our willingness to act with courage, with compassion, our trust in something bigger than just ourselves.
The map isn't handed down fully formed. It's drawn from these lived experiences. Ordinary people.
So what stands out to you from these stories? How might these ideas about ordinary people making extraordinary choices resonate in your own life?